All right, family. We black again. We're gonna see how this work. We're gonna see if we can get through successfully. Let's see if we can get through successfully. We're in the house. Okay, we're in the house. Come on in, family. We're gonna pop it off this time. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, we live. Yeah, I can hear. Okay, I see Ray. Hey, Ray down there. Yeah, we're gonna pop it off this time. Okay. Let me put the well, I guess I can't put the what's the name on. I'm gonna just have I'm gonna have to stay peeping the chat, make sure everything. I got my little monitor up, so if I see you holler and say it ain't working, then but I think I done fixed it. Let me get on. Let me get up in the mic. Let me get up in the mic, family. So let's jump right back in. We're gonna jump right back in. We're gonna get in a lot of these visuals. You feel what I'm saying? Getting a lot of these visuals and scoot through here. You feel what I'm saying? And so, come on, let's go to work. Let's go to work. Now, y'all entice me to go even harder this time. You see in the general, you know, standing right there in the Nessium suit. Yeah, yeah, with the left foot forward. That's right. Huh? Stepping like the ancient priest. You see, stepping like the ancient priest. That's when the brother General Seti got rose up. That was 2005. That's when I became Seti. And I've been crushing. I was crushing him before that, but I was showing up energized. You see, stepping like many that had came before me. You see me stepping, then you see, master teacher Ashra Kwesi, in the same, stepping in front of the Grand Master. Stepping in front of the Grand Master. Yeah, yeah. Stepping in front of the Grand Master, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakana. And people don't, like I say, people don't know. When I met Dr. Ben, he was already in his 50th year. I met Dr. Ben in 1987, I think. And he came to Detroit for the Akibalan Association the Founders Day. He came in. He came the next year too. And we're gonna go back to that. But see, a lot of people don't know that Dr. Ben, when I when I met Dr. Ben was already in his 50th year. He did 50 years in 1989. What you see up there, the 30 years is for how many years he did tours. He was in his 30th year in 1989 doing tours. You talking about 1957. You see what I'm saying? Now, Dr. Ben was taking people to Egypt. I wasn't even born yet. You wasn't even born. You know, that's how long this grandmaster been doing it. And a lot of people don't understand that they was already in the temples. See, this is what's critical about Dr. Ben. Above and all, you cannot find no other scholars doing this. Where you talking about back in the 80s and the 60s and the 70s, being in the ancient, most people that hadn't even connected to ancient Egypt at that time. Most of the black people in the West, and that's on the escalated level. You talking about the 80s, late 80s, going into the 90s. You see where it became just all over the place. It became all over the place. You had the scholars going from city to city, from country to country, and so that was like, yeah, you talking about the late 80s, 90s for sure. But Dr. Ben was already in the temple. See, Dr. Ben took us back to the temples. He took us back to the land of Kemet in Nubia and in Ethiopia, in the understanding of Nile Valley culture. Some people, may have went back, but did they go back with that understanding of the African origins of Nile Valley culture? So this is what Dr. Ben above and beyond any scholar, taking us back to the land, pilgrimages to Kemet, pilgrimages to Sudan, to the temples, to the pyramids, you know, and he's there, reading out of the papyruses. We didn't know nothing about them papyruses. Who took us to the papyruses? It was Dr. Ben. They took us to the Natter rules. We didn't know nothing about no Sobek and no Shishak and no Ma'at and no Amen and no Asar and no Aset, no Haru and none of the new. The black woman is God, and that's Dr. Ben. That's Dr. Ben. So he took us to the root of all our studies. And some people believe that they could surpass. This is the cornerstone. Dr. Ben is the cornerstone. You feel what I'm saying? Without Dr. Ben, there wouldn't be no studies of the Nile Valley in the West. No, not at all. He was and when you talk about, you got to have ground runners. Dr. Ben and Dr. Henry Clark was they was on the ground in America. They was doing the lectures from city to city, from state to state. They were the ground runners. So though, you got other scholars and we love them and we adore them. They holy scholars and we take nothing from them. Their books is classical material and we must have that. But if it wasn't for Dr. Ben going from city to city, state to state, you feel what I'm saying? We wouldn't have the movement that we had today. Ray, we out there? Throw me something up in the chat and let me know we good, Ray. John Henry Clark, man, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark is like, you got to have them together. You in the house, Ray? How look and sound out there? Throw me something in the chat. I'm good. Okay, good. That's all I needed to know. That's all I need. Okay. And so you see this now, this was actually the mystery system book. And that was actually Dr. Ben was actually performing funerary rites for this brother, who had passed on. So he was actually performing funerary rites. And so this is that book right here. Now I didn't know Dr. Ben was gonna be in Detroit this year. Now this was actually 2005, right here. This was 2005. And it was actually the year I was raised up because I got the same shirt on. You know what I'm saying? When you look right here, you see the general with the Detroit red on. And I come back and how in the world did the answer? He didn't come there to see me. He came there to see one of his older friends. And they said, Dr. Ben is in town and, they called me. They said, Dr. Ben, I said, come get me now. And we, come get me. We got to go see the master. And he was over there and I sat down, I had me some scrolls. I most definitely, I wanted to get it. All my books, all my Dr. Ben books is autographed. You feel me? I got an Ivan Van Sertima autograph or Dr. John Henry Clark. I got about 2-3 books from Dr. John Henry Clark autograph. So, I had to get them signatures. You feel what I'm saying? But, we continue, continuing on the legacy. It had been handed down. So you had to see you had to see a bloodline. These niggas just be popping up out of nowhere. You don't know where they came from. Motherfucker come out the alley and then Get on, you can get on, you come out the alley and get on YouTube today. Shit. Take you a quick course on, black power and shit and go on the internet. And niggas say you the greatest of all time. Nick can't even spell his name. You know what I'm saying? And because the level of ignorance is at all time high today. At all time high. So, I even took, all the brothers and, from Detroit. I used to bring them up there to see Dr. Ben. This was actually when I was getting ready to go to Ethiopia. I did a lecture in Harlem. Y'all remember it was called, the Young Master, Gathering of the Young Master. It was me, Umar, and sadly to say, Polite. That was at that time. I knew his fall was coming, but we wasn't there we went up there of our own energy. So, it was still separation and, in that energy. So, I went up there to represent for the Black Power for real. You know what I'm saying? And so I went up there and rock, and I was out of there on my way to Ethiopia, but I bring the brothers up to meet with the master. Yes, indeed. I bring the brothers up to meet with the master. They had never seen Dr. Ben. I said, y'all gonna meet him today, and so, and the crazy thing is, I bought Doc, I used to go up there. I say, Dr. Ben, you hungry? He just wanted something from the restaurant. You know what I'm saying? I say, Dr. Ben, man, what you want, man? It is a restaurant not far from where he was and shit. He said, man, go and get me some shrimp. I said, Dr. Ben, damn well you ain't supposed to be eating no shrimp. You know what I'm saying? But I go on, he say, man, I want me some shrimp, man. And Dr. Ben, everything that he asked for, I said, I'm gonna go get it for you, Doc. I want him to have a, shit. Go and get you something. You feel me? And that's crazy that this the same year. I had that Khalid Abdul Muhammad on, you feel me? Yeah, I was on my way, and then crazy. I'm just showing, it could get deep. I can't go, and this was 2013. This was the year after that. A lot of people want to pretend like, because they try to edit, and try to edit the reality, even though I can show you, man, I damn near met with Dr. Ben damn near 20 years straight. You know what I'm saying? Rarely did I miss seeing him, only when I didn't have no lectures in New York, and then but by then, by that time, shit, Doc had passed on, and this was when I seen Doc. This was the year he passed. This was January. I think Doc passed what in March. It was either May, March, one of them. I don't remember because I remember being with him. You know what I'm saying? I didn't get caught up in that. But that was the very year he passed, and I say, man, let me go and see Doc. And it broke my heart. But I had seen him, and I had seen him twice because he got the same. So I was up there 2 days, came back the next day to see Doc. This was 2000 right here. I had came up, and seen him, and he was at this was at Reverend Al Sharpton place in New York. I don't even know if he still got that place. He probably do. He probably do. You know what I'm saying? But he got like a little banquet hall and upstairs and downstairs, and we most definitely, he let all the scholars, come through because I even believe Dick Gregory was up there, at one point in time. But I was just showing, my walk, with the and with Dr. Ben and I got a chance to, Dr. Clark passed, within 9 years, but I got a chance to build with Dr. Clark too. This again, I showed y'all these was the magazines, that my uncle had put out. So, I went, I studied through these magazines first. A lot of the young brothers and sisters that went over with Dr. Ben, they was the writers of this magazine. And so they could bring, you could get just, one what is it called when a magazine editorial, so they was breaking it down in like 2 3 page editorial, so you could get you can get a quick breakdown on some of this information if you wasn't really ready for them big books, you know what I'm saying? So this was what got me ready, you know what I'm saying? This is 1990. I was already in the comedic study. You know what I'm saying? Who was Ra? I was already into the deities. I'm not saying this to brag or nothing. I'm just saying I know what the fuck I know. You know what I'm saying? I know what I know. I've been studying it over 40 years. I ain't got to be all the way right, but I know damn well I'm close. I'm a long way from being even close to being all the way wrong, and I ain't gonna even say by a lot, not even a little bit. Imma just be real. I'm closer to being on than I'm even close to being off. Now I can tell you that without a fact, without a doubt. So Anubis and all of that. So I was learning the deities. We was learning all the pharaohs and the god and the queens, and we was learning that. And so by the time I got ready to go, you gotta imagine I was reading this is '89, you know? This is 1989, and we already studying, the Nubian aspect, the ancient Egypt. You see right here, Judgment Day, already going into the papyruses and things of that nature. So imagine shit, by the time I got ready to go to Kemet, in 2000, and I had already been studying about 16 years. I was already had done 16 years of really deep research before I even went. So when I went, shit, I was already on avatar mode. You feel what I'm saying? I was already on avatar mode. And so again, quickly going through that, I went 2003 to in 2005. That's when I became Seti in Tef. And Tef was the royal bloodline of the Middle Kingdom. The Mentu Hoteps. They the ones that started a lot of that shaft tunes like you see in the Valley of the Kings. You feel what I'm saying? They was the ones that, started them particular type of tunes. And he was one of them royal bloodline Waset that started to rise up against them damn invaders, and started, make some noise and crack a few heads. And then later on, Almos and them came up, and I believe they had some lineage to the Intefs, and and they was the ones that eventually pushed the Hyksos out of there. I also after going to Egypt 3 times, I went to Mexico. You feel me? Went on a historical tour down there. We went to Teotihuacan, and that's the great big pyramids down there in Teotihuacan. And also going, we went to the Mexico City National Museum, and that's where mostly all the large statues and things is in that particular museum. Then we went to La Venta. La Venta is it was one of the strongholds of the Olmecs where the giant stone heads is located. A lot of them is in that museum too, and then some other museums. Palenque, you see Palenque, that's where Pakal, where the Mayan, where Mayan king was buried in a sarcophagus, and I was showing y'all how the pyramid got the L shape in it. Then we went up to Uxmal, and and then I don't even see Monte Alban. We was another a Monte Alban. It was another uh Olmec stronghold. Then you had Uxmal, you had Chesanitsa. You know what I'm saying? We got on up out of there, but I was able to see about, I think I see one, two, three, four. Wait a minute, one, two, three, four, five. I think we seen 5 pyramids in in Mexico. We seen, yeah, 3 at Teotihuacan, Then we couldn't see that one in La Venta. That was the first pyramid in La Venta. It was a mound, but it had stones around it. But I don't know who removed the stones. Somebody removed the stones. So only thing you see there now is the mound. Then Palenka, then Uxmal. So I 3, 4, 5. Wait a minute, 3, 4, 5, 6. I seen 6 pyramids in Mexico. And shit, I don't know how many I seen in Egypt. So I done been to a lot of damn ancient pyramids, and then I went to Ethiopia. That was in what, 2011 too. It was during New Year's. That was during New Year's. That was when I was up there with Dr. Ben with the Khalid Muhammad on. Yeah, that was 2011 and 2000. So I was right there on the New Year. I spent the New Year in Ethiopia. I think I was in Lalibela too. I believe I was up on the mountain when it turned January 1st. So yeah, so I done been to, 5 places of ancient wisdom and knowledge of African people. Let me come out of this part. And so let me go over to some of the pyramids and things that the brother General Seti been to. Let me see if I can get up out of here real quick. I'm gonna go through a few more and then we'll come out. And then as I come in the next time, I'm gonna have some eh, hold on, family. I'm gonna go over here. Now that's right there. That's the master bar Mariruka. Now that's over there in Saqqara. I believe that's Saqqara. Yeah, that's over there with Saqqara, Master bar Mariruka. So that's inside of that Saqqara pyramid field, over there at Saqqara. And so yeah, now that's crazy because I've been in there, all of these I've seen 3 times. This was probably, I don't this that was the first year, and this probably was like the second year. You know what I'm saying? No, well, this is Kajim. Now, what's crazy? The master bar Kajimini ain't that far. It might be next door. You know what I'm saying? Because all of them royals was like right in the same area and shit. And so here's this is at the Temple of Luxor, and this is right, this is in Waset, or what they call, yeah, Luxor today. The Arabs call it Luxor, the Greeks call it Thebes, but the Africans call it Waset, and this is where the brothers was raised up. This was the Grand Lodge. After you did all your studies in the various you down at Karnak is where they had the university. And then after you did your 40 years, you would come down here to this temple right here, and you would be you would get your final initiation. Now, this right here, I don't even remember what. I believe this was either the bent pyramid, or I don't know. I think this might have been the bent pyramid. I can't tell, but you can see how big them damn blocks is. I can tell you that. Them goddamn blocks, and you can imagine how many it is. You can imagine how many is. Ain't nothing like this on the planet Earth. Now, this right here, this is Menkaura's pyramid. This is the third largest pyramid on the Giza Plateau, and you can see some of them, on that lower level. Menkaure got some megalithic stones over there, man. Them stones is heavy, they're real heavy over there. He got some blocks that's, up to a hundred tons. You feel me? And so this was really at the museum. As I was saying, they got some of them stone heads at the museum now. Uh, and it's crazy because this one right there is also in the museum, right? Nah, this is the same one right here. It's the same one. But this one right here is in Ethiopia. This is a replica of that. And I couldn't believe I was seeing it. I was riding by in a bus, and no, I wasn't even yes, I was. I was on the bus, and I rode, and I was kind of dozing off, man. And I look and I say, man, is that an old Mac head? And I'll be damned if it wasn't. I had to come back. I got me a damn cab and came back just to take that picture, you know, just to take that picture and just to show, like, damn, the ancestors then lured me over into this damn head, man. I wouldn't have never known, but the country of the nation of Mexico sent that over, because, during the times of when the Italians was bombing Ethiopia and was at war with Ethiopia. They said that Mexico took a stance for Ethiopia, and so they sent this over for as a marker of support, And so I said, okay, but it looked like that's where it belonged anyway. All they did was prove the fact that this is where the brothers. I mean, it looked just like any African that's on the continent of Africa. So all they did was give a person an opportunity, because nobody in their wildest imagination would believe it came from any other place other than Africa. You feel me? Now this is me at Teotihuacan. So I was at the top, and I believe this one is I think I'm on the top. I think the other one over there is the pyramid of the moon. So I think I'm up on the top. This is the pyramid of the sun. So I'm at the top of the pyramid of the sun, and that one right behind me is the pyramid of the moon. I went up top that one too. You see, this one is Uxmal. This is Uxmal, at the pyramid. They call that the pyramid of the magician, or the pyramid of the dwarfs. And so imagine that. What dwarfs is they talking about? Because ain't no dwarfs in the Americas. You feel what I'm saying? There is no dwarfs in America. So where did these dwarfs come from? And finally, I'm gonna stop here for this evening. This is Palinka. This is Pakal, and this is the one where I show you the L shape down in the pyramid, with the sarcophagus. Now, I wasn't able to get in there at that time because they was remodeling and all of that. And so they were you couldn't even get in there. But to my understanding, shit, they letting people in there now. But right next to it is it's a complex. And so his Queen's pyramid was right next, and it's smaller than just, it's not really a pyramid. It's more like a tomb. But when you go in, she had a sarcophagus too. And so both of them had, and then it's some more of these, this line of Pacals. And for some reason or another, they had some access to some African knowledge. So, how, and, I'm still trying to piece that together, how they was able to get, get some of this knowledge like that. You feel me? Because it's most definitely, we know how, but I'm trying to get intricate research on how these particular kings, or this bloodline, was able to get this knowledge from, ancient Africa, to be able to put a pyramid together like that, almost exactly like an African pyramid. And this right here is Chichen Itza, and believe me, the days I was there, that's actual smoke. It was kind of like, man, when I first got to Palenque, man, it was like fog and shit, man. And so being down there in that damn jungle, and it was foggy and shit, you couldn't even see the sky, and the smoke was through I said, man, what kind of shit is this, man? It was looking real spooky down there for real, for real. But, just showing you that, the general didn't have a complete education in this shit. You know what I'm saying? The teachers, the preliminary study with the books, and even research on the site, field research. You feel what I'm saying? So the general input, and then of course, coming to YouTube and shit, and people think I'm not one of y'all niggas. I mean, it is what it is. I'm talking about these niggas out here teaching now and shit. I'm not one of you, nigga. Don't compare me to you. Don't do that shit. You know, when I got on the internet in 2005, nigga, I don't want to show y'all niggas how to do lectures and shit. You know what I'm saying? And all this, that, and the third. I'm talking about for this generation. I'm not talking about nobody that came up under the mask because they was well aware. I'm talking about this particular generation, and moving forward from that. So I don't want nobody to say, oh, Seti, man, we seen. I know you old nigga. I know you older than me. You saw Dr. Ben and Doc. And so I'm not talking about that particular generation. But for anybody that came, after 2005, nigga, you know what I'm saying? You already know. And I just leave it there. And we can continue to go through the resume as we move forward. I appreciate y'all being here today. I just wanted to put that out there so, people don't think that I'm just making shit up. I want you to really take what I'm saying into consideration. I ain't saying to just believe, but take it into consideration and take the information that I'm giving you and work with it, research it. I always want you to research it, and I try to give you the literature to go behind me. And you always got access to the master teachers, and you should always do that. Those are the cornerstones of the African, and so you should always use their literature as the primary foundation of your research. Yeah, okay. I'm still here. How I'm looking out there, Ray? Because I'm about to tap out and I'm gonna do this last one. How we looking out there, Ray? Tap in for me. Let me see you. Let me see you put something in there. Oh, thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Ray done went to sleep on me. Okay. All right. Was it blurry or something? How did it look? Because I'm trying to make sure my internet working right. Okay. All right then. Well, we're gonna tap out, man. We got one more for this evening. Yeah, Ray ain't happy. He up there. He watching the game at the same time. But anyway, I'll be right back, family. Don't go nowhere. We got one more for the road, and then we got the mystery system. I'm doing all them before I lay down, and so y'all stay with me. If you want to check me out on the mystery system, get on over there and on Patreon. I see you. I know my shit moving slow. My shit moving slow right now. But anyway, I'll see y'all in a minute. Get over to Patreon, click that link, Black Power.